The world had never felt smaller than it did in that alley. The walls on either side pressed in like the ribs of some dying beast, and the sky above was a suffocating blanket of cloud, not a single star brave enough to pierce through. It was my birthday. 27 years old. And I was on my knees. "Hold him still," a voice said. It was calm, unhurried. I knew that voice better than I knew the sound of my own heartbeat. Isabella. Isabella Vance. Two men, large, faceless, their breath fogging in the cold night air, had my arms pinned behind my back. My right cheek was ground into the damp asphalt, the grit scratching into my skin. My phone had skittered out of my pocket during the initial struggle, and from its tinny speaker, I could hear my sister's voice, rising in panic. "Oliver. Oliver, what's going on? Answer me. Say something." I tried to call out, to tell her to run, to call the police, to do anything. But a hand clamped over my mouth, muffling the sound. I watched through blurred vision as Isabella picked up the phone. She looked at the screen, Jasmine calling, and with a flick of her thumb, she ended the call. The silence that followed was worse than the screaming. Isabella Vance was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Even now, with her looking down at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe, she was beautiful. Long dark hair, sharp blue eyes, a mouth that could curve into a smile that once made me believe I was the luckiest man alive. We had been together for 3 years. 3 years of my life, poured out at her feet. Now, she crouched down to my level. The click of her heels on the pavement echoed like a countdown. "You scratched his hand, Oliver," she said, her voice soft, almost gentle, as if she were explaining something to a child. Ethan's hand. Ethan. Ethan Cole. The golden boy. The one she had loved for 10 years before I ever came along. The one whose shadow I had unknowingly lived in for 3 years. I didn't mean to, I tried to say, but the man holding my hair yanked my head back, cutting off my words. "Shut your mouth," he hissed. "You think intent matters? You think Mr. Cole's hand cares if you meant to slice it open?" The old door handle. A faulty latch. A moment of distraction. That was all it had been. I had been rushing out of the staff lounge, my mind full of a surgery I had scheduled for the next morning, and I hadn't seen him standing on the other side. The broken handle had fallen, the sharp edge catching the back of Ethan's hand, opening a gash that required 12 stitches. 12 stitches. And for that, my right hand, the hand I had spent 15 years training, the hand that had held scalpels and sutures, the hand that had saved lives, was now pinned to the ground, about to be destroyed. "Miss Vance," the man holding my arm said, a smirk in his voice, "maybe we should take both. Just to be sure." Isabella tilted her head, considering. She reached out and touched my right hand, her fingers warm against my cold skin. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Doubt. Regret. I couldn't tell. The alley was too dark, and my eyes were too full of tears. "I can't have you standing in his way," she said finally, almost to herself. "You understand, don't you, Oliver? Ethan is going to be the greatest surgeon of our generation. He can't have obstacles. And me." My voice cracked. "What am I?" She smiled. It was a sad smile, and somehow that made it worse. "You're mine," she said. "You'll stay by my side. That's enough. You don't need to be a doctor anymore." Something inside me broke at those words. Not my hand, not yet. But something deeper. Something that had kept me going through medical school, through the sleepless nights, through the endless hours of study and practice. The dream of standing at an operating table, of holding a life in my hands and refusing to let it slip away. "You can't do this," I whispered. "Please, Isabella. Please. I'll do anything. I'll leave. I'll go away. You'll never see me again. Just please, don't take my hand." She stood up, stepped back, and nodded once. The steel bar came down. The first blow was the worst. Not because of the pain, though that was immediate and blinding, but because of the sound. The wet, crunching sound of bones that had never been meant to break, shattering under the force of cold, deliberate violence. I screamed. I don't remember deciding to scream. It just tore out of me, raw and animal, echoing off the walls of the alley and disappearing into the uncaring night. "Again," Isabella said. The second blow came down. Then a third. I lost count. I lost track of where my hand ended and the ground began. The pain was so vast that it stopped being pain and became something else, a white-hot absence, a void where my right arm used to be. I crawled. I don't know how. My legs were still working, though I couldn't feel them. I dragged myself across the filthy ground, my left hand scraping against the asphalt, reaching for the hem of Isabella's dress. She stepped back, just out of reach. "Please," I sobbed. "Please, I don't love you anymore. I don't love you. Just let me go. Let me keep my hand. I need it. I'll die without it. I'll really die." She watched me. She watched me crawl and beg and bleed, and she did nothing. Only when my right arm was a ruined, pulpy mess, only when the men were breathing hard from the effort of swinging the bar, only then did she hold up her hand to stop them. "You'll still marry me," she said. It wasn't a question. "You'll stay with me, but you won't stand in Ethan's way." I collapsed. My left hand reached across my body, trembling, and touched what was left of my right arm. The bones moved under the skin like loose gravel. I couldn't feel my fingers. I couldn't feel anything below my elbow except a phantom burning, a memory of pain that had already become a permanent resident. My face was wet. Tears or blood, I couldn't tell anymore. I looked up at Isabella one last time, and something in my eyes must have changed, because for just a moment she looked uncertain. "Isabella Vance," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "you will never see me again in this lifetime. You're damned to a life of unrequited love and misery." She opened her mouth to respond, but the world was already going dark at the edges. The last thing I saw was a face, beautiful and cold, as I slipped into unconsciousness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. My hospital. The irony was not lost on me. Jasmine was there, her face blotchy from crying, her hands gripping mine, my left hand, the one that still worked, like she was afraid I would disappear if she let go. "Jasmine," I managed. My throat was raw. I didn't know if that was from screaming or from something else. "Don't talk," she said. "Just rest. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." I looked down at my right arm. It was wrapped in bandages so thick it looked like a cast. I couldn't move my fingers. I couldn't move my wrist. I tried to curl my hand into a fist, and nothing happened. "Jasmine," I said again, and this time my voice broke. "My hand. What did they do to my hand?" She didn't answer. She just held me tighter, and we both cried. I need to go back. Before the alley. Before the steel bar. Before I became this broken thing lying in a hospital bed, staring at a ceiling that refused to give me any answers. I need to tell you how I met Isabella Vance. It was summer. The kind of summer that makes you believe in good things. Blue skies, warm breezes, the smell of cut grass drifting through open windows. I was working at St. Matthew's Hospital, a first-year surgical resident, too tired and too overworked to notice much of anything outside of my patients and my studies. But I noticed her. She was standing in the hallway outside exam room 4, watching me through the glass window. I was examining an elderly man with a fractured wrist, explaining the treatment plan in the gentle, patient voice I had learned from my mother. My mother had been a doctor too, the best I ever knew, before the cancer took her when I was 19. Isabella was beautiful, yes. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she looked at me. Like I was something rare. Something precious. When our eyes met through the glass, she didn't look away. She smiled. A small, almost shy smile, as if she had been caught doing something she shouldn't. Later, she told me she had been walking by, heard my voice, and turned to see who was speaking. She said it was like seeing an old friend she hadn't known she was looking for. We started dating. It was easy, at first. She was attentive, thoughtful, always showing up at the hospital with coffee and takeout, waiting for me to finish my shifts no matter how late they ran. She held my hand during the hard days, the days when a patient didn't make it, when I had to tell a family that there was nothing more we could do. And she called me Nate. It was a small thing. A nickname. No one else called me that. My sister called me Oliver, my colleagues called me Dr. Oliver, my mother had called me Ollie when I was young. But Isabella called me Nate, and it felt special. Like we had our own language, our own private world. "Nate," she would say, wrapping her arms around me from behind while I studied at the kitchen table. My Nate. I thought it was because she loved me. I thought it was because I was unique to her. I didn't know that she was saying Ethan. Ethan Cole. The golden boy. The one she had grown up with, the one she had loved since she was 16 years old, the one who had left the country to study medicine abroad and broken her heart in the process. I didn't know that I looked like him. That my profile, the way I tilted my head when I was concentrating, the way I spoke to patients, all of it was a mirror, a pale imitation of the man she truly wanted. The rumors started about 6 months into our relationship. I didn't pay them much attention at first. Doctors' lounges are full of gossip. Who's sleeping with whom, who's getting promoted, who made a mistake in surgery. It's background noise. White noise. But then I started hearing my name. Did you hear? Ethan Cole is coming back. The Ethan Cole. From Johns Hopkins. The same. I heard his brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And then, quieter, with a glance in my direction, I wonder what Isabella Vance is going to do now. 2 of them. They look so similar, don't they? Similar. Oliver is practically a knockoff. A placeholder until the real thing comes home. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that Isabella loved me, that 3 years together meant something, that the way she looked at me couldn't be faked. But there were signs. Things I chose not to see. She never gave me a birthday gift. Not on my actual birthday. She always said she wanted to give me something special on the anniversary of the day we met. I thought it was romantic. I thought it was her way of saying that our meeting was more important than the day I was born. The anniversary of the day we met was Ethan Cole's birthday. She gave me a medical notebook that day, a leather-bound journal with blank pages, for me to fill with my notes and observations. For your dreams, she had said, kissing my forehead. So you can be the best doctor you can be. I treasured that notebook. I wrote in it every day, filling it with surgical techniques, case studies, everything I was learning. I showed her my progress, and she would smile and nod, but her eyes would drift away like she was looking at someone else. She was always looking at someone else. The accident happened on a Tuesday. I was exhausted. I had been on call for 36 hours, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. I pushed open the door to the staff lounge, not looking, not thinking, and the old handle broke off in my hand. The sharp edge of the metal fell, and I heard a gasp from the other side of the door. Ethan Cole stood there, his hand already bleeding, a deep gash across the back of his knuckles. He looked like me. That was the first thing I noticed. The same jawline, the same shape of the eyes, the same way of standing with weight shifted to one foot. Looking at him was like looking into a funhouse mirror, similar, but better. Sharper. More confident. I'm so sorry, I said, grabbing his hand without thinking. Come with me. We need to clean this. Now. He didn't resist. He let me pull him down the hallway to the treatment room, let me examine the wound, let me clean and suture it with steady hands despite my exhaustion. It's okay, he said, when I apologized for the 10th time. It's not a major injury. The handle was broken. It could have happened to anyone. A doctor's hands are precious, I said, more sharply than I intended. You can't just dismiss it. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something passed between us, a recognition, a kinship. 2 men on the same path, both driven by the same impossible dream. But I didn't know that the moment I touched him, I had signed my own death warrant. Isabella found out. Of course she found out. Someone told her, one of the nurses, one of the medical students, I don't know. But she found out that I had scratched Ethan's hand, that I had caused him pain, that I had threatened the instrument of his future. And she decided that I needed to be taught a lesson. The days after the alley are a blur. Not because I forgot them, not yet, but because the pain was so overwhelming that it consumed everything else. Morphine and disbelief, bandages and whispered conversations outside my hospital room. The Miller family, Isabella's family, was powerful. They had money, connections, lawyers who could make problems disappear. And I was a problem. A first-year surgical resident with a ruined right hand, a sister who was demanding justice, and a voice that was getting louder every day. They offered a settlement. A generous one, they said. Enough to cover my medical bills and then some. Enough to live on, if I was careful. In exchange, I would sign a non-disclosure agreement. I would never speak of what happened. I would never press charges. Jasmine wanted to fight. She wanted to go to the police, to the media, to anyone who would listen. She wanted Isabella Vance to pay for what she had done. But I was tired. tired and broken and lost. I signed the papers. I took the money. And I went home. Home was a small apartment that Jasmine had found for us. Temporary, she said, until we figured out what came next. I sat on the couch and stared at my right arm, still in its cast, still useless. I tried to move my fingers. Nothing. I tried to flex my wrist. Nothing. What if it never comes back? I asked Jasmine one night. She was making dinner, something simple, pasta and sauce, because that was all she knew how to cook. She stopped stirring and looked at me, and I could see the fear in her eyes. The fear she had been hiding from me for weeks. It will come back, she said. The doctors said there's a chance. Physical therapy. Surgery. We'll try everything. The doctors said there's a chance, I repeated. That's not the same as saying it will come back. She didn't have an answer for that. Neither did I. The first time I forgot something, I didn't notice. It was small, where I had put my keys, what I had eaten for breakfast. The kind of forgetfulness that everyone experiences, the kind you blame on stress and lack of sleep. The second time, I noticed. I was standing in the kitchen, holding the medical notebook Isabella had given me. I had opened it to a page near the front, where I had written notes on a surgical technique I had been studying. But the handwriting was unfamiliar. It was mine. I recognized the loops and slants, but the content was gibberish. Words that didn't make sense. Terms I had never heard of. I stared at the page for a long time, trying to remember writing it. Nothing came. Jasmine, I called. When did I write this? She came over and looked at the page. Her face went pale. Oliver, she said slowly, you wrote that last week. I watched you. Last week. I had no memory of it. No memory of sitting at this table, no memory of picking up the pen, no memory of any of it. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The diagnosis came a week later. Early onset Alzheimer's disease. The doctor, a kind woman with grey hair and tired eyes, explained it to Jasmine in the hallway, but I heard every word through the thin door. The patient is only 27, she said. This is extremely rare. But the scans are clear. The cognitive decline is already significant. It may be linked to the trauma he experienced. Physical trauma can sometimes trigger early onset in genetically predisposed individuals. Is there a cure? Jasmine's voice was shaking. There are treatments that may slow the progression. But no. There is no cure. No cure. The words echoed in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull. I was 27 years old, and I was losing my mind. Piece by piece, memory by memory, I was being erased. And somehow, inexplicably, I was relieved. I didn't understand it at first. Why would I be relieved to learn that I was dying? But as the days passed, as more memories slipped away, I began to understand. The Alzheimer's wasn't just taking my past. It was taking the pain. It was taking Isabella. It was taking the alley, and the steel bar, and the sound of my own bones breaking. Every morning, I woke up and there was less of me. But there was also less of her. Jasmine didn't see it that way. She was terrified, frantic, desperate to save me. She removed everything from the apartment that might trigger bad memories. Photographs, hospital papers, anything related to Isabella. She quit her job to take care of me full-time. She made appointments with specialists, researched experimental treatments, called every doctor she could find. But I was slipping away. And part of me, a selfish, broken part, wanted to slip. One day, I woke up and I couldn't remember why my right arm was in a cast. I looked at it, puzzled, and tried to lift it. Pain shot through my shoulder, and I cried out. Jasmine came running. What happened? Are you okay? Why can't I lift my arm? I asked her. Did I fall? Was there an accident? She stared at me for a long moment. Then she sat down on the edge of the bed and took my left hand in both of hers. You were hurt, she said carefully. A long time ago. Your right hand was injured. Will it get better? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I don't know, she said finally. But I'm going to take care of you. No matter what. You're my brother, Oliver. You're all I have left. I nodded, accepting this information the way you accept the weather, as something that simply is, without question or judgment. I didn't remember the injury. I didn't remember the pain. And I didn't remember Isabella Vance. For the first time in weeks, I felt something that might have been peace. The days blended together after that. Time became a river, flowing in one direction, but I was standing on the bank watching it go by, unable to step in. Jasmine took me to a care facility, a quiet place with a garden and soft music playing in the hallways, and I settled into a routine that required no memory at all. Wake up. Eat breakfast. Sit in the garden. Eat lunch. Nap. Eat dinner. Sleep. Sometimes I would try to remember things, anything, and my mind would hit a wall. A soft, forgiving wall that gave way without resistance. There was nothing on the other side. Just emptiness. Just silence. The Alzheimer's was progressing faster than the doctors had predicted. Some days I couldn't remember Jasmine's name. Some days I forgot how to use a fork. Some days I sat in the garden and watched the birds and felt nothing at all. No sadness, no fear, no hope. Just a quiet, endless grey. But there were moments. Glimmers. Brief flashes of clarity when the fog lifted and I could see myself, the person I used to be, the doctor I had dreamed of becoming, the man who had loved and lost and been broken. In those moments, I felt the grief. It was overwhelming, crippling, worse than the alley. Because in those moments, I remembered what I had lost. And I knew I would forget it again. One day, during one of those moments of clarity, Jasmine came to me with a question. Ethan Cole wants to see you, she said. The name meant nothing to me at first. Ethan Cole. I turned it over in my mind, searching for a connection, and found only fog. Who is he? I asked. Jasmine hesitated. She had been protecting me, I knew. Shielding me from anything that might trigger the trauma that had started all of this. But something in her face told me that this was different. He's a doctor, she said finally. He's been waiting outside for days. Every morning, he shows up. Every night, he leaves. He says he needs to talk to you. About what? I don't know. He won't tell me. He says he'll only talk to you. I thought about it. The fog was creeping back in, the edges of my clarity starting to blur. If I was going to see this man, it had to be now. Okay, I said. Send him in. Ethan Cole walked into my room like a ghost. He was dressed in a white shirt, simple and clean, and he looked tired, the kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. His eyes were red-rimmed, as if he had been crying, and his hands were trembling. He looked like me. That was the first thing I noticed. The same jawline, the same shape of the eyes. But older, somehow. Weathered. Oliver, he said, and his voice cracked on the first syllable. I gestured to the chair beside my bed. Sit down. You look like you haven't slept in days. He Saturday. He stared at my right arm, still wrapped in bandages, still useless, and his face crumpled. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. All of it. I shook my head. I don't understand. We've never met, have we? I don't remember you. He flinched as if I had struck him. You don't remember? I don't remember a lot of things, I said gently. It's the Alzheimer's. It's been getting worse. I know, he whispered. I know. They told me. I had to see you. I had to tell you I'm sorry. If it weren't for me, this never would have happened to you. I looked at him, this stranger who seemed to know me, and something stirred in the fog. A fragment of memory. A door opening in a hallway, a sharp piece of metal, blood on pale skin. The door, I said slowly. The handle. It was broken. Ethan's eyes widened. You remember? Not really. Just pieces. Shadows. I looked down at my useless right hand. I hurt you. I scratched your hand. It was an accident, he said quickly. It meant nothing. A few stitches. That's all. She had no right to do what she did. She had no right to decide that your hands were less important than mine. My hands. I looked at my left hand, still working, still whole, and then at my right. The bandages had become a permanent part of my body, as familiar as my own skin. Tell me about her, I said. Isabella. I've forgotten most of it. But I know she was important. I know she broke me. Ethan was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. She loved you, he said. Not the way she should have. Not the way you deserved. But she loved you. In her own broken, selfish way. I was a substitute, I said. For you. He shook his head violently. No. At first, maybe. But not at the end. She told me, after everything happened, after you, she told me that she had realized too late that it was always you. That I was just a memory, and you were real. And she destroyed you. I absorbed this information the way I absorbed everything now, slowly, carefully, like handling something fragile. She came to see me, I said. Recently. I think. I remember someone climbing through a window. A woman, crying. She brought me a book. A medical encyclopedia, Ethan said. Your mother gave it to you. It was destroyed in the alley, and Isabella collected all the pieces. She spent weeks repairing it. I didn't recognize her, I said. I told her the book was fake. That my mother's book was better. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. She told me. She said it was the worst moment of her life. Worse than the alley. Worse than anything. Because you looked at her like she was a stranger, and she knew she had lost you forever. We sat in silence for a while. The fog was rolling back in, filling the spaces where my clarity had been. I could feel myself slipping, the memories dissolving like sugar in water. Before I lost him, before I lost this moment, I reached out with my left hand and took Ethan's. Listen to me, I said. I don't know how much time I have, but I need you to hear this. He nodded, gripping my hand like a lifeline. This was never your fault, I said. Not the door. Not Isabella. Not any of it. You are not responsible for her choices. Do you understand? But if I hadn't come back, you would have come back anyway. She would have done this to someone else. Someone who didn't have a sister like Jasmine. Someone who didn't have a place to fall. I squeezed his hand. You have to protect your hands, Ethan. You have to become the best doctor you can be. For both of us. I reached into the drawer beside my bed and pulled out a small tube, Scar cream, the same kind I had meant to give him months ago, before everything fell apart. Take this, I said. Use it. And when you stand at the operating table, think of me. Carry me with you. But don't let me hold you back. He took the tube with trembling fingers. Oliver, Go, I said gently. Be brilliant. Be the man I couldn't be. He left. I watched him go, and when the door closed behind him, I lay back against my pillows and let the fog take me. The clarity came less often now. Days would pass, or weeks, I couldn't tell, in a haze of half-remembered faces and forgotten words. Jasmine was there, always there, her voice a constant thread pulling me back from the edge of oblivion. But I was tired. So tired. And then, on a night when the moon was full and the fog lifted one last time, I saw everything clearly. I remembered my mother. Her face, soft and lined with years of late nights and hard work. Her hands, steady and sure, holding a stethoscope to my chest when I was 6 years old, pretending to listen to my heartbeat. You're going to be a doctor, she had said. I can feel it. You have the hands for it. I remembered medical school. The endless hours of study, the pressure, the doubt. The first time I held a scalpel and felt my hand shake, terrified that I would make a mistake. The first time I saved a life, a young woman, a car accident, internal bleeding, and felt something shift inside me, a purpose taking root. I remembered the alley. I remembered the steel bar. I remembered the sound of my own bones breaking and the taste of blood in my mouth and the look on Isabella's face as she watched me crawl. And I remembered that I could never go back. My right hand was ruined. Even if the bones healed, even if the nerves regenerated, I would never have the fine motor control required for surgery. The dream was dead. It had been dying for months, but now, in this moment of perfect clarity, I finally accepted it. I was 27 years old. I had no future. I had no hope. And I was a burden, a heavy, crushing burden, on the only person who loved me. Jasmine had given up everything for me. Her job, her friends, her life. She spent every waking moment taking care of me, and what did I give her in return? Nothing. Less than nothing. I gave her grief and worry and sleepless nights. I gave her a brother who forgot her name, who soiled himself, who screamed at shadows. She deserved better. She deserved a life. The care facility was quiet at night. The nurses did their rounds, checking on patients, but they had learned to leave me alone. I was the quiet one, the easy one, the one who sat by the window and watched the moon without making trouble. I stood up. My legs were weak, I hadn't used them much lately, but they held. I walked to the door and opened it. The hallway was empty. The nurses' station was at the other end of the building, and the night shift was understaffed, as always. I climbed the stairs. 1 floor, 2 floors, 3. The door to the roof was unlocked, a violation of every safety regulation, but this was a small facility, and the rules were often overlooked. The air was cold on the rooftop. The moon was bright, casting silver light across the tar and gravel. I walked to the edge and looked down. The ground was far below, far enough. I sat down on the edge, my legs dangling over the void, and waited. It didn't take long. Someone must have seen me on the security cameras, or maybe a nurse had noticed my empty room. I heard the sirens first, then the shouting. The street below filled with people, firefighters, police, a crowd of onlookers drawn by the commotion. And Jasmine. I saw her push through the crowd, her face tilted up toward the roof, her mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear. Oliver. Her voice carried on the wind, thin and desperate. Oliver, come down. Please, come down. The firefighters were moving quickly, inflating an airbag below me. I watched them work with clinical detachment, remembering everything I had learned about the mechanics of falling. The airbag would save me if I jumped now. I would have to wait. Or choose a different spot. Oliver, please. Jasmine was crying now, her voice breaking. I'll do anything. Anything you want. Just come down. Please don't leave me. You're all I have. I looked at her, my sister, my protector, the only constant in this dissolving world, and I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my ribs. Something deeper. Something that had been holding me together, keeping me alive, even when I didn't want to be. But I was so tired. And I knew with absolute certainty, that if I went back down, nothing would change. The fog would return. The forgetting would continue. I would spend another month, another year, another decade in that grey haze, dragging Jasmine down with me. She deserved better. Jasmine, I called down. My voice was quiet, but in the sudden silence of the crowd, she heard me. Tell me, I said, in the next life, can I be the best doctor? She shook her head frantically, not understanding, not wanting to understand. You can be anything you want. Just come down. Please. I'm begging you. I smiled. It was the first real smile I had felt in months. Mom, I whispered, to the moon, to the stars, to whatever was listening. I'm coming to find you. And I jumped. For one perfect, terrible moment, I was flying. The wind rushed past my face, cold and clean, and the ground rushed up to meet me. I saw the firefighters reaching for me, their hands outstretched, one of them grabbing at my right arm. But my right arm was useless. I pulled free. And then there was nothing but darkness. I don't feel the impact. I don't feel anything after that. But I stay, in the spaces between, in the moments after, and I watch. I watch Jasmine fall to her knees on the pavement, her screams swallowed by the night. I watch the firefighters turn away, their faces pale, one of them sobbing into his hands. I almost had him, he says. I almost had him. The days that follow are a blur of grief. Jasmine doesn't eat. She doesn't sleep. She sits in my empty room at the care facility, holding my medical notebook, tracing the words I wrote before the Alzheimer's took them away. She doesn't speak. She doesn't cry. She just sits. And then, slowly, she begins to heal. It starts with a man, a colleague from her work, someone who had always admired her from a distance. He brings her food. He sits with her in silence. He doesn't try to fix her, doesn't try to make her forget. He just stays. His name is Daniel. He is kind, patient, and he loves her the way she deserved to be loved all along. Over the months, he pulls her back from the edge. He helps her manage the company she inherited from our parents. He holds her when she cries. And one day, he asks her to marry him. She says yes. On the anniversary of my death, they visit my grave. Jasmine stands in front of the headstone, her hand in Daniel's, and she talks to me the way she always did, as if I can still hear. "I'm getting married, Ollie," she says. "I hope you don't mind. I hope you would have liked him." She pauses, her voice catching. "I miss you. Every day. But I'm okay. I'm going to be okay." Daniel squeezes her hand. He doesn't speak, but he doesn't need to. I see the way he looks at her, the way I wished someone had looked at me, and I know she is in good hands. I watch Ethan Cole. He cries for 3 days when he hears the news, locking himself in his apartment, refusing to see anyone. But on the 4th day, he gets up. He washes his face. He puts on his white coat. And he becomes the doctor I never got to be. He carries the scar cream I gave him everywhere, in his pocket, close to his heart. He never uses it. It sits in its tube, a reminder of the man who gave it to him, of the dream they shared. When he solves a difficult case, when he saves a life that others had given up on, he doesn't celebrate. He crosses out his own name on the patient's thank you cards and writes mine instead. Oliver Hart. Over and over, on every card, on every plaque, on every award. "You don't have to do that," his colleagues tell him. "You earned this." He just shakes his head. "We earned it. Both of us." And I watch Isabella. She turns herself in the day after I die. She walks into the police station, her face pale, her hand shaking, and she confesses to everything. The alley. The steel bar. The men she hired. The life she destroyed. She is sentenced to 10 years in prison. She doesn't fight it. She doesn't appeal. She sits in her cell and stares at the wall and waits for the days to pass. But something is happening to her. Something she doesn't understand. She starts forgetting. At first, it's small things, where she put her toothbrush, what she ate for breakfast. Then it becomes bigger. She forgets the names of her lawyers. She forgets why she is in prison. She forgets the faces of her family. And then she starts forgetting me. She sits in her cell, her hands clutching her head, trying to hold on to the memories that are slipping through her fingers like water. The alley. The steel bar. The look on my face as I crawled toward her, begging for mercy. "I'm sorry," she whispers, to no one, to everyone. "I'm sorry, Oliver. I'm sorry." But the apologies don't stop the forgetting. Nothing stops the forgetting. She writes letters to me, letters I will never read, letters that pile up in her cell, pages and pages of desperate confessions and broken promises. "I love you. I didn't mean to. I was wrong. Please forgive me." And then, one day, she can't remember how to write anymore. The doctors diagnose her with the same disease that took me. Early onset Alzheimer's. They say it's a coincidence, a tragic coincidence, 2 people struck by the same cruel fate. But I know better. She sits in her cell, an old woman at 40, and she stares at the wall and murmurs the same words over and over. "Nate. Nate. I'm sorry, Nate." She doesn't know my real name anymore. She doesn't know hers. She doesn't know anything except the guilt, the crushing, endless guilt, that follows her into the darkness. One night, the guards find her on the floor of her cell. She has tied a bedsheet around her neck. Her face is peaceful, almost smiling, as if she has finally found something she was looking for. I watch her go. And I feel nothing. Not forgiveness. Not anger. Just a quiet emptiness, like the fog that used to fill my mind, soft and forgiving and final. Time moves forward. Jasmine and Daniel have children, 2 girls, both with my mother's eyes. They grow up knowing my name, knowing my story, knowing that their mother had a brother once, a brother who wanted to be a doctor. Ethan becomes famous. He writes papers, gives lectures, performs surgeries that change the face of medicine. He never forgets me. He carries me with him, always, a quiet passenger in the back of his mind. And the world moves on. I am 27 years old forever. Frozen in time, suspended between what was and what might have been. I watch the people I loved find happiness, find peace, find closure. And I am glad. Not because I am brave, or selfless, or good. But because I am tired. I have been tired for so long. And now, finally, I can rest. The moonlight catches the edge of a cloud. Somewhere, a bird sings. And somewhere else, in a place I cannot see, a young man stands at an operating table, his hand steady and sure, his eyes bright with purpose. He looks a little like me. And when he saves a life, When he pulls someone back from the edge of death, he smiles. Not for himself. For both of us.